Do I look okay? Is this all right?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right, we are live. Thank you. It's your man HRap B coming at you again. This is Built for This Network. Thank you for tuning in. As you know, this is a show called The End of the Bench, Build and Destroy, where we build up our community and destroy the lies and propaganda that surrounds our community. I will be joined by a few people today. My sister Black Cotton, my brother Ernest Johnson, and we will be expecting a few guests soon. As you know, every week I have to announce this. This is a podcast. So when you tell me you miss my show, it is impossible to miss my show. A podcast is on-demand entertainment. And the reason I say that is because you can catch it here on Spreaker.com, on YouTube, at Built for This Network, and The End of the Bench, THAENDOFDABENCH. And then you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, or wherever you download your podcast. Now, as I move forward, I want to let you know that I acknowledge my ancestors on every program. If you send up respect to your ancestors, they send down blessings and protections to you. That's why I announce my family. That covers everybody connected to the Whitmore, Pollard, Turner, Battle, Cotton, Harper, Bailey, Chris Lansdowne, Liggins, Duncan, and anybody who's listened before. You know me, my mother, my father, my brothers, and my sisters. We are part of the Williams clan, and we will always be in the building. Thank you for tuning in. If you're tuning in on Spreaker.com, please hit the like button and share on your social media. If you're tuning in via YouTube, please do the same. I want you to hit the like button and share. It is imperative. We want to beat that algorithm and put us at the top of everybody's page so we can get this message out to our brothers and our sisters. Thank you again for tuning in. I got my sister Black Cotton. Ernest Johnson will be returning. I got my brother Johnny. He's joined in presently. Thank you for tuning in. It's going to be a blast. What we're going to do this evening is speak about Black history. Black history is a vast history, and we've talked about it from a male's perspective. We've talked about it from a woman's perspective. Now we're going to talk about it from a spiritual and communal perspective, because I personally believe that will be the most powerful segment in this series that I'm doing, and the series has inspired me to continue. So hopefully we can talk to these people on an individual level as well as in a group setting. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please introduce yourself and we can get started.
You waiting on me, Johnny? You're on mute, honey.
You're on mute, Johnny.
Yeah, good evening to everybody. I said ladies first.
Okay, well, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. I am Black Cotton. I am a final semester student at the McCormick Theological Seminary. I will be graduating May 8, 2021, and I am excited. I am a widow, and I am an ordained minister at the First Church of Deliverance, the Spiritual Church of Love and Faith, where the pastor is the Reverend James R. Bryson Jr., and the founder is the Reverend Clarence H. Cobbs. I now defer to my brother Johnny. Hey, Johnny.
Hey, so I'm also a graduate of McCormick Seminary. It was a blessing serving in some classes with Black Cotton. Yeah, I'm just a pleasure being here. My name is Reverend Johnny Kearney. I'm a associate minister at St. John Church Baptist. Prior to that, I served under Leon Finney at Metropolitan Baptist Church. Also, like I said, I'm a graduate of McCormick Seminary with a master's in ministry. It's a blessing to be here.
All right, thank you for joining us. And Ernest will be back. Oh, he is back. Ernest, please introduce yourself.
I was like, what's going on? But I'm here.
Please introduce yourself to the good people.
All right. Well, my government name is Ernest Johnson, but I go by Pastor Ernest, Pastor E, EJ. Depends on where you know me from. Depends, what you call me. But I've been pastoring maybe consistently about 6 years, and I've been a minister since I was ordained at 14, 15. And I come from a family of preachers. So my father's a preacher. My father's father's a preacher. My father's 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 a preacher. My father's mother's father is a preacher. Same thing on my mother's side. My mother's father's father is a preacher. So it's deep, man. This is just kind of life for me. I love doing the work that I do, and also do coaching and counseling and handyman work, construction. So that's my life, man.
Building things. I love that.
Indeed.
Building some spirit. Well, basically, as I stated at the top of the show, what I want to do, I'm doing a series about Black history. And as I've done more research, the father of Black History Week is originally called Negro History Week, Carter G. Woodson. He stated the fact that if your history can be summed up in 30 days, it doesn't need to be discussed. So I initially started this off as a 4-part series, and I'm going to continue not just the Black History portion. I'm going to rebrand my show, and I'm going to talk about. I already talked about our community. It's called Build and Destroy, and the purpose is to build up our community and destroy the lies and propaganda that surround our community. This week, we're going to talk about the church and its place in our community. A lot of people are uber critical of the church. A lot of people are walking away from the church. A lot of people are walking away from religion altogether. As Brother Johnny said, let's go ladies first. What are your thoughts on that, and how can we improve it? And then we'll get right into the conversation of the day.
That is a brilliantly loaded question. And for purposes of clarification, can you narrow that question down, because it's quite broad?
Okay.
So,
well, what are your thoughts on people walking away from the church, and how can we change that?
I don't have any thoughts as for people walking away from the church, because we don't know why. We know generally and broadly why folks are leaving the church, but we do not know specifically, and the needs specifically to each person, what their need is and what the infraction or hurt was to said individual. How we can change that? Now, that's a very easy question. Is a inward evaluation of what is the church not doing? How is the church not reaching? Each church needs to do a demographic profile of what it is that they're doing wrong. An honest discussion with itself, with its own self. Okay, we've had so many people leave. We've had this many people, young people, and seniors and older people are leaving the church as well. What is it that we are not doing in this particular body of believers in this corner that is causing people to leave church? And that's my take on it thus far.
Okay. Let's move right over to Johnny, and we have a brother Alan that's coming in right now. He'll be in soon. He's getting ready now, and we'll introduce him when it's appropriate. Johnny, you're next. You're on mute again.
I can definitely agree with Reverend Black Cotton. I think we have become tone deaf in a sense. Historically, the Black church has always been a safe place. Mm-hmm. And it was a safe place for many reasons, like in doing civil rights. I would talk to my mother and my grandmother, and they always talk about you can find lawyers in the Black church. You can find certain businesses in the Black church that wasn't allowed to be in other communities. However, now the Black church is not seen, and I just don't think it's a safe place, especially for our youth. I think we have become tone deaf. Kind of like Reverend Black alluded to. We need to listen to the community and know the community needs. I mean, there's some churches that still expect you to dress a certain way else they will turn you away. There's some churches that are still stuck in a lot of biases. So I think that's the challenge. We need to listen to the community, listen to what's going on to really be able to engage generations to come.
I can appreciate that as well. With that being said, I got my man Ernest, Pastor Ernest. You're next up. Can't hear you. You're muted. Can you speak now? You're very low. Your volume has been reduced tremendously. Can't hear you at all now. Well, what I'll do is I'll introduce our next guest, and then we'll see if we can get back to you, okay? Whatever you just did, something came through. I can't hear you at all. What I'll do is introduce Alan Conley, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you again. Welcome to the show. We have another guest, which is Alan Conley. Thank you, Pastor. Please introduce yourself, and then feel free to, if you heard the question, speak about it, and if not, I will repeat it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I apologize for my tardiness. I was a part of another panel discussion, and it went over, but I'm just grateful to be a part. My name is Alan Conley. I am a servant here in the city of Chicago. I serve as the director of the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives for Chicago Public Schools. Also founder and CEO of an organization called Beyond the Brick Ministries, which was birthed during the pandemic. Also, I am the creator of a 30-minute inspirational digital series titled Unconventional, which is an unconventional way of spreading the good news through music, through talk, inspirational stories, and more. I did not hear the question, brother moderator. If you could give me the question, and I would attempt to tackle it.
Okay. The initial question was, a lot of people, are walking away from the church. What can we do why do you believe they're walking away, and what can we do to slow that down?
Sure. It's a wonderful question. It's something that I have looked at over the years because it didn't just start happening overnight. Mm-hmm. People have here in westernized culture, westernized religion. When we look at just the pandemic alone, if we compare COVID-19 to the Spanish flu, the respect or how people appreciated religion back then is totally different than now. Here it is when the churches were closed down, you had church folk were crying and saying, "Oh, they're shutting the church down. I got to get back to church." But those who were not going to church, no one had this mindset like when 9/11 hit, when a lot of our churches were overflowing because people were afraid. They thought the world was coming to an end. Here it is with this pandemic, which was indeed global. It's global. No one was saying, "Hey, I can't wait to go back to the church." We still have people going to the beaches. We still have people trying to go dine in, which lets us know that this is a different day. So how do we then reach those individuals who aren't looking to come into our churches? So I often say, where back in the day we were trying to go after the lost. Anyone who wasn't in church, they were lost. But is it that they're lost, or is it that they were found by someone who did what the church should have been doing? I often look at the passage of scripture where we talk about the Good Samaritan as if all Samaritans were bad. But this gentleman in that particular text was coming from church, and he was going down towards Jericho, and the Bible says he fell amongst thieves. And here it is, the same people who the brother was worshiping with The priests and the Levites, they came and walked by him and just left him there to die. And here it is, a Samaritan comes by, someone who's a direct enemy of the Jews, comes by, gets off his horse, goes to attend to the man, puts him up on his horse, then takes him and put him up in a room and pays for his night's stay. Why couldn't the church have done that? And the same thing happens today. And so we have the audacity that same brother who fell amongst thieves, I joke with it, but I'm kind of serious about it. We would have the same mentality that brother who fell amongst thieves that we passed over, we will be looking for him to come back to church the following week. Why should he? Why should he go back to that church when those people who he were worshiping with, it was okay when he was giving his tithe, his offering, that he was good. But once they saw him laying in that place of destitute, where he's of no good at that moment to anybody else, we leave him there. But we have the audacity to think that brother should come back to church. No. We have to take ownership of what it is that we've done, what we have not done, and maybe if we can be honest with ourselves, some of those people who we've hurt, some of those people who we've ran away, some of those people who we didn't think were valuable, like millennials, young people, because they don't have jobs and we think that they can't offer anything to the church. But then now, once that church, the demographic starts getting older, now you realize that we should have been investing in those young people while we had them, because now they don't want to come back to church. So that's my long way of saying that we have to take ownership of what we've done and what we did not do in order to invest in those people who don't want to come to our churches.
Brother Johnson, can we hear you now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you good. You can go ahead and proceed.
Excellent. So, I definitely agree with my brother Alan and, and the other speakers as well. Jesus in Matthew 19 is dealing with divorce. When he's questioned by the Pharisees, like, what about divorce? And he essentially is saying, if we can kind of, bring his conversation forward, he's like, hey, this is not back in the day. Things change. People change. Conditions have changed. That's the same dynamic that we're dealing with the church. Things have changed. Things done change, the way Vicky would put it. And the fact of the matter is that we're not looking at just like one church. Like, if you grew up holiness, that was a different church experience. If you grew up Baptist, that was a different church experience. If you grew up apostolic, that was a different church experience, right? If you grew up Catholic, that was a different church experience. Now, all of these different churches offer different types of services and experiences. Fortunately, I've been, blessed to be in a lot of different, denominations. And what I've come to find is that a lot of people are leaving the church just based on my experience talking to people, is that they have doctrinal issues. They don't believe in the information that is given, especially today. A lot of the information is being countered by what they experience on the internet, especially if you're Black conscious. You want to get into Egyptology. You want to get into, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. You have that group of people. And so things, it's like, but I think the church is experiencing what the Jews experienced, what we experienced in the church is that they thought that they had a corner on God. And now we're seeing that people can actually experience these concepts we report in the church, like love and compassion and forgiveness outside of the church. They can actually experience these particular concepts. And I don't know if I think that I don't judge that should be slowed down. I just think that there are more options available for you now, where we can experience these concepts that we, as a church, once had a corner on. It is kind of sad because the church was more than just a doctrinal thing for me. It was where I learned how to speak. It was where I learned how to sing, and it was where I connected with elders and got wisdom. It was where elders took me out to eat, showed me etiquette, showed me how to date a girl. It's not just about Jesus and going to heaven. It was about living right now. And so that's what I'm saddened about, is that a lot of kids don't get a chance to experience being around elders. Going to, like, one of my good friends, she pulled up a video and posted it on Facebook of her grandmother singing
She has actual documentation of her grandmother singing in church. That was where we had an opportunity to express the arts, and do so much more and develop our families and our children and go to fish dinners and eat with our families and friends and invite people to fashion shows and, prayer breakfasts. I mean, it's way more to it than, than just, I got to get saved. You know what I mean? Granted, that's a huge part, but there was so much more in terms of our community. That's where we built our history in church. That was where, we passed along, and that was the wire, where you passed along information. So for me, that's what saddens me about people not coming to church.
Sister Black,
that's
Sister Black Cotton, did you have something to add to that?
No, I was just reminiscing along with my brother, EJ, because when he mentioned the fish dinners, and I was like, ooh, the teas. Don't forget the teas. There was the usher board tea, brothers board tea, and the missionaries teas, and we had super community at that time, and you could feel the love between everybody in that moment. When the love left, and might I also add a whole bunch of hand waving songs, and not a lot of songs that get you to your belly. Not our artists started to fail us and did not produce music that would continue to speak to our souls, that would be wrenching kind of music. It's beautiful music. I'm not knocking the music. At the same time, it is not the sound or the impetus that we needed that was able to shift an atmosphere. There's an atmosphere shifting because you have the and that's wonderful and it's beautiful. But ours is a sound of liberation. And so once we restore the sound of liberation to the belly of the church, you're going to still, as in particular to the Black church, I feel that you will still have this continued exodus.
Now let me just build on that point too, what she just mentioned. Like a book I'm reading currently, My Grandmother's Hands, talks about how call and response heals trauma. Who would have thought, right? Like when we were singing Dr. Watts, and you got 100, 200, 1,000, 1,500 people singing that song, it's healing you. It's doing something viscerally to you, to your body. And so we can walk away just from an experience like that, just different, able to cope a little bit better with our everyday stuff. So, that sound is missing. I think Alan had mentioned it as well. It's missing from our church. That sound when you walk in, you can be coming in. You remember coming in through the church and you walking through that front door and you can hear that choir singing and you can hear that wood knocking. That was something. You see what I'm saying? Like in the tamarind. And again, like our sound has become a lot more commercial. Like how do we prepare ourselves to be more commercial and to capitalize on the sound? And I think that's a fine line, because obviously people want to eat and they want to do it, they want to be successful. But when we're doing things with the intent to capitalize, it's a difference than what we're doing in terms of being moved and stirred by the Spirit.
If you all don't mind, I want to talk about that. That's that soundness. Soundness is a word that it has. I think it's almost forgotten these days. I know you all are talking about sound as it relates to the tonality of what we hear in music, presentation of song, but also in doctrine, right? The Bible, Paul is helping young Timothy to prepare to listen for sound doctrine, right? So those songs meant something to us because, one, they were lyrically and theologically sound in this presentation. Nowadays, you have music that we can't even discern whether it's gospel or not. Is it gospel? Is it really the gospel message? And I think that there's this framework I've been working on where, you have education, you have training, and you have indoctrination. All three of these things is what you would find in church, right? But education is liberating. Training is stimulating. Indoctrination, and this is the key here, indoctrination in the Black church has often led to incarceration. And not incarceration in a sociological sense, but in more of a psychological and spiritual sense. That many of our churches, especially in the Pentecostal church, some of the doctrine we know now, it was not sound. But why was it preached? So you have this millennials and Generation Z, they're asking this question, why? And we can't answer it. We just did it because we were trained to do it. And we were trained to do it by those who were not necessarily educated in what they were doing. So now all of a sudden, you're afraid to go to another church. You're afraid to eat with the Buddhists. You're afraid to hang out with the Muslim because you've been indoctrinated so that you don't leave that particular church, and now you're caught up in something that is not sound.
Hey, allow me to interject right there because that's why I entered the church. Exactly what Alan said, because in regards to learning the word of God, I'm a relative neophyte. I've been doing this I've been studying consistently for about 10 to 12 years, right? And the only reason I went back to the church is because I met this guy. And instead of saying, because that's what God said, or that's what you're supposed to do, he walked me through the word. And once he walked me through one lesson, the doors of the church opened up to me, as well as my personal pastor, Reverend James Dodd III. But before I ever met Pastor Dodd, Ivan Jackson walked me through it. So I was like, it was like, what do you mean? You're supposed to do this. Why? Because you're supposed to. No sound mind human being follows that path.
Sure.
Because you're supposed to. Why am I supposed to? And nobody, because that's what God said. And now you haven't even had the opportunity to welcome me into the teas, the lunches, the music, that feeling when that choir is rocking and you walk in there, you almost feel like you get lifted off the ground. I missed out on all of that. And just understand, I caught on to that at age 36. I'm 50.
Wow.
So that's why I even presented the question, as well as you guys touched on. I want you to, and if anybody else want to add on to this, let me know by just waving. And I want to add on to this. Just imagine how many people missed out on something on that fellowship. How many people turned to the gangs? How many people turned to the abuse, whether it be a substance or a liquid or whatever, the mental abuse, the physical abuse or whatever, because as my pastor died, who ended up finding a new path when he challenged our original church by saying, we've been here 20 years. Why ain't more of the people in the community inside of this place? If anybody want to add on to it before I move forward.
No, I just want to add this particular caveat for anybody who is in particularly triggered in this moment by our conversation. I would like to extend an opportunity for you to breathe right now, and also to extend yourself some grace. We are not persecuting you. We are not judging you in any kind of manner. We are on your side, and which is the side of justice and which is the side of God. So we honor whatever you are feeling in this moment. If you are triggered in any way, we are embracing you right now. And take care of yourself. Do what is needful to take care of you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sister Black Cotton. Thank you.
Let me say this, brother, because see, that's where you want church to be at this particular point, where church hasn't been. Because it was like, what you feel. It's not about what you feel. It's this is what God said. So therefore, you need to do. And the element that Reverend Black Cotton just brought in is an element that should definitely be posted in the foundation of church today. Honoring people where they are. And that was what Alan brought out. That Samaritan honored that man's life. He honored his life. He didn't look at their differences. And if you know about the Samaritans and the Jews, they were arch enemies. Because, one was saying, hey, no, we need to worship over here. And them saying, no, you need to worship over here. That was huge, right? So, but he didn't put that first. He put that person's humanity first. And so for this sister to bring that out, I think that's what we want to be as preachers and teachers, prophets, and so on and so forth, evangelists, choirs. We want to honor people where they are, what they feel, and sort of like what your experience was, right?
Okay. With that being said, how important is the history of the Black church? Because you know what? Again, thanks Sister Cotton again, because she emphasized the Black church, and that's the purpose of this, the Black church, because we need to get our house clean, no matter what denomination you're part. We need to get our people back in that church. But what emphasis do you guys place on the history of the Black church? Do you think learning how this started off by us getting out of the fields, and that was the only time they would leave us alone and take their foot off our neck for a brief period of time, and how it elevated into the Methodist church, and the Methodist was an anti-slavery church, and so forth and so on? How important is that to the teaching that to our potential and future parishioners, or even our past parishioners, and getting them back in the church? How important is that? I want to go to the brother Johnny because we left him out, and I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah, I'm sorry I lost connection for a second.
Oh, okay.
But to respond to your question, I think it's very significant that we understand the history. And I think that's lost. And if we understood the history better, we probably wouldn't respond the way we do. I think in a lot of cases, we don't understand the history and what it's about. For me, my father was, he had me over the age. He was 50. So he was older, and my grandfather was older. So I come from an older generation, even though I'm in my 40s. So I got told a lot of stories, and I was intrigued by these stories just to gather more information and to read and to learn. But I think there's a certain richness in knowing your history, and especially knowing the history of the Black church, and knowing, as you all talk about, those songs that were so significant, and where that comes from, and the pain that those songs come from. So yeah, I think it's very significant.
Okay, I'm gonna go to you, brother Allen.
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate the history of the Black church. We just had a wonderful presentation that aired this week on PBS. But I think that we cannot negate when we tell the historicity of the Black church. We can't just start with America. We have to go to Africa. And this is something we don't deal with enough, because when you look at the maps and if you really exegete the text and pay attention to Black presence in the Bible, there's a whole lot of stuff happening in Northern Africa, which means that there's this presence of Blackness in the Bible. And then when the church began, the early church, there's these Christians who are Africans. So there's a percentage, even though during the slave trades, there's a high percentage of Muslims who were in the trades, there was a percentage of Christians as well, which helps us substantiate our point that Christianity is not a white man's religion. So I think we don't start there enough. We start usually on American soil because of the injustice that has happened here. I do believe that we do need to look at the symbolic essence of the crucifixion of Christ and lynching in America, because the missionaries who came over to Africa, who enslaved us, I think that it was done under this umbrella of Christianity. Those are some of the things that we have to unpack and look at how much of that still exists today. And so we shouldn't have to talk about the black church, because the reality is that when we say the black church, we're doing this to differentiate ourselves from some other folk who consider themselves to be a part of the church. And many of them don't care about black folk, if we're going to be honest about it. But when you look at me, this is the Lenten season. And for me, every year, for the last 10 years, ever since Brother James Cone came out with his book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, I read that book religiously every year around this time of the year, because this is a journey to get closer to the cross. But what good is it if we get closer to the cross theologically, but sociologically, we're still messed up. We still have this bad theology. We still cannot see the symbolicness between the cross and lynching. Mm-hmm. Something is wrong when someone can preach about Jesus on the cross, but we can't preach about the heinous lynching that took place here in our country. Something is wrong if you are a pastor of an all-white congregation and you never deal with the fact that we've never had someone come in here of a darker skin hue in our church. And you never mention that to your congregation. Something is wrong when now it's publicized, when people are dying on live television at the hands of some unjust police officers, and we don't deal with it in a congregation because we don't have black people in our congregation. And we try to sum it up as that, well, God still loves everyone. No, something is wrong. So this is why I think the history of the black church is important for us to deal with. But we can't just start here in America. I think we have to go back to Africa, because what happens is that we deal with an identity crisis. We think that we have now a generation of young people who they don't have a racial bias until they're taught that. And so it's easy to get caught up in the multicultural aspect of church, which that's what the kingdom is. But let's go back to our roots and see that black people historically has played a role in the advancement of Christianity around the world. And that's where I'm at on it.
Sister Cotton?
That would be Black Cotton, Sister Black Cotton. It needs the clarification and identifier of the kind of cotton that is.
I apologize. Sister Black Cotton. Let's do it.
I want some black cotton. Don't give me the white cotton.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely. But I agree with what's been said already. We, Johnny and Alan and I are, and Ernest too, he just needs to come on back, are from the same stock as it is McCormick Theological Seminary.
Right.
So I am currently in Dr. Daniel's class, Alan, Church History 2. So I just read the story of Athanasi and how he was in Jerusalem at the time, and he was walking into this particular church, and in this chapel there were various different Christian sects worshiping God and Jesus, all in their own way. You had the Jewish folk, you had this group of folk, you had the black folk, and it was the Hells Franciscan folk, all these different groups worshiping God in their own traditions under one roof. And the African presence was there. Now, just to let you know, according to the 2020 census, Northern Africa and Egypt and Middle East are considered white. So when we start doing deep dive and excavations of the Black history of the Black church, and we go back to Africa, we really need to take into consideration that there's a whole other conversation that is happening that is doing the Tom Sawyer of whitewashing the fences of our history.
Yes.
So it is incumbent upon those of us who know this history and who have access. Jamie Wooten, on the ends of the Black Church, episodes that just happened on PBS, created and curated a Black Church syllabus. So if you go to, and this is just, something that I learned, I'm not getting paid, but it's hashtag Black Church Syllabus. Google that, or on your local social media between Facebook and Twitter, and you can find books that speak to the history, not only of the hush harbors of the South, and not only to the embracing of the various different kinds of religions. That, in voodoo, you have women wearing white and they're speaking in tongues and they're expressive with their bodies and in their dance, along with some very spiritual folk here in the United States, and have been doing that for the past 6 generations in various churches that are still in existence today. Yep. So you will find books that you will be able to have these kinds of conversations that we're having now, and do an exploration and deep dive with that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Brother EJ?
So again, I'm with Alan. Like, where do we start? We talk about Black church history, right? One of the things that I recently discovered is that obviously the Old Testament is a Hebrew language, which is a Semitic language, and I just found out that Ethiopian is a Semitic language, right? So when we go back, like we're finding like all of these connections, and it's like, wait, hold on, like somebody leaving something out. Something is like something ain't right here, like what Alan was saying, it's just not right, So I think it is incumbent upon us to know our history, to find out our history. Well, let me just bring it a little bit forward. Bishop Trotter, who I came up under, he took us to, we just happened to be out west one, he took us to Daddy B. Poole's church over there on the west side, right? And he said, let me show y'all where they had the tumors on the wall. When she would heal people, they would take the actual ailments and put them up and hang them up on the wall. That's that for me, that's Black church history. These are things that I didn't know. And this was a man who knew every doggone hymn and every Black church hymn. How did you know this stuff, right? And just the people he affiliated with has so much richness in Black church history. But when I think about, most people don't know that. But what was the sister that used to work in the county jail?
Consuelo York.
My God, that's a sister that's need to be rocked, need to be reverberated throughout our community. That was a praying sister. That was a sister that was, dedicated to the movement and being in church in the county and introducing Jesus in the church, the concepts of love and compassion to all of these men and women in the church. In the county. That's Black church history to me. If we talk about here in America and here in Chicago, I don't know about the rest of the world, but when I think about Zeus, right, that's Black church history. Nothing's really popping into my head, but there's so much that we're made out of. There's so many stories, so many lives being impacted by the church, and I just I think everybody else has really said it really well. I don't have to kind of co-opt their stuff, but I just want to bring people's names out, who impacted me and impacted the people who impacted me. Because we can obviously look at the negative side of this, Black folks in church, but why? We do such a good job at that, right? But there are just so many people in this city. Bishop Frazier, Woodline Organization. You think about his contribution to people having rent-controlled houses. That's huge, right? That's such a major piece to what we've done. The church has done. People, I got a lot of negative stuff to say about the church, but like you think about what these men and women have done in the community, they sacrificed. Yeah, some people got paid, some people living good because of it, but there are so many other people whose names we don't even know that have contributed to impacting people's lives. There are people. I was on a call last week, a brother who, gang banger, whatever, did whatever he did, served time, but he was like, look, man, my life has turned around because of church. Like, I could still be doing that, but it was somebody introduced this to me, and now look at my life. Now I'm helping people. That's serious, man. I don't care what kind of criticisms you have about the doctrine, about what folks are doing, what they ain't doing, who's sleeping with who. There are people's lives who are really being changed because somebody else's life was changed, and then somebody else's life was changed, and it just keeps going back and back and back. And for me, that's the kind of history I like to tell.
That's right.
Anybody want to add to that?
I just want to say, well, especially here in America, the civil rights era, we would not be where we are today if it had not been for the Black church. And I think that's what this generation has to, we want them to appreciate. And I think that now, when you look at the Black church presentation, that's pretty much what they were getting at, is that we wouldn't have gotten to where we are if it had not been for the Black church. But does the Black church still have that power? Do we still have that same significance? And I think that if you look at the history of the Black church, it was Christocentric, where everything was about pointing people to Christ. It wasn't about pointing them to religion. But we did have leaders. We had single leaders. And I think that's what has messed us up, is because we're still looking for, we have this, the Messianic Jew concept, where we're looking for the Messiah, that one person. And that's the whole purpose of the church, is that the ecclesia that called out, you all have to do this together. God gave us the anointing so that we can be the church, not singular, but collectively, all together. But if we keep looking for this one, and operating in oneness and just in not working in a unison fashion, then we will never get back to the place where we are working together. And it makes it hard for us to advance. That old African proverb where if you want to go, you can go quick alone, or you can go far together. And I think that the only reason why we were able to advance during that civil rights era is because there was a sense of togetherness. But now you got churches fighting against each other in the Black church, if we're gonna be honest. But we gotta work together if we want to advance.
And can I add something to that too? It's sexist as well.
Yep.
Let's call it out.
That's right.
It's less season, so let's find some things and call it out as what they are. It's sexism. Who's to say that the one person that could be able to lead, that the people that they're looking, they're looking for that one person to lead, is a female, has breast and a booty.
Yeah.
And some men are very traditional in their thinking and cannot think past. Some people are homophobic and cannot see past same gender loving people. So when I think of Opal, Patrice, and Alicia, in the inception of the Black Lives Matter movement, which was just a hashtag at the beginning because it was not necessarily a movement, but it became a movement, and it had to be protected because there were men all over the United States trying to co-opt and copyright the hashtag before the sisters could do anything about it. I know this, I witnessed it for myself. In a group dedicated for academic women, those three women poured out their hearts to us. And we were like, okay, well, you're going to need to protect yourself because intellectual property is a thing. So Black Lives Matter became intellectual property, became a movement, and they decided to drive the narrative. And a lot of Black preachers, there's one Black preacher in particular in Bronzeville who I am currently thinking of, who created a song with Black Lives Matter and will not give credence to the three women who started and coined the term in the beginning. It's like me as a womanist saying, just negating Alice Walker and not paying homage to her in any way, the woman who coined the term and literal term womanism and womanist and defined it, and not giving her any credence, and I'm just walking along in my way. A lot of that is happening as well. And my brothers, it would be nice if you all stood up to your other brothers and told them to stop.
Mm-hmm. Anybody want to expound on that?
Let's church say amen. I guess, Erykah Badu came out with that song, Window Seat, challenging the concept of groupthink. Where I think like the group, I don't want to be separated from the group, right? Ostracized from the group. That's an existence that we've been socialized to not want to have. What Reverend Black Cotton is talking about challenges that conventional thinking. Like, man, do I call my guy out, for being a patriarch, being sexist, only, can only see a person via sex. I'm the type of person who I try not to think like the crowd. I intentionally try to put myself in position to be on the opposite side. Not because I don't like being liked, but because I just want to make sure that I'm living to my fullest potential and that our groups are operating at their fullest potential. So for me, I challenge people. I challenge them. I don't care who. I used to challenge Mr. Trotter. He'd be like, man, I love having you around because you do not care who I am. Because you're gonna say it. You're gonna question me. And for me, that's the type of person I am. I remember sitting in theology school, and one of the sisters was referring to God as a father or man, and the professor challenged her. I said, "So you think God is a man?" So, and to talk about kind of injustice in Black history, like, we come from people who see God beyond gender, right? We even if we did reference gender, like Brother Jeremiah Wright would say, or like the sister Christ Universal Temple. What was her name? Oh my God, powerful sister.
Johnny Coleman.
Johnny Coleman used to say, Father, Mother God. Yeah. Right? Father, Mother God, right? And they didn't care what the rest of the Black community was doing, So, yeah, I definitely agree with that sister that we definitely need pioneers and brothers, especially as profound as these gentlemen here and myself, to really speak up and protect what we have and to make the space safe for whoever is there. That's my take on that. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I think that the position that I take is to make sure that I'm a good steward with what God has given me. I'm at the place now where I'm not trying to bother these folks. People are going to believe what they want to believe. And so what they do at that church, because I grew up in a church where we would people would attack the other church that wasn't doing what they were doing or didn't believe what they believed. And I'm beyond that now. My thing is, if somebody is practicing where they still don't allow women in the pulpit, then it's my duty to not operate in that way, in that fashion. If somebody else is homophobic and they can't embrace the same gender-loving people in their congregations, then so be it. I don't want to be the one to go and say I want to go and call them out because people have the right to go to churches. Bishop Brazier used to say, "There's a church for everybody." He would say, "Everybody there is no shortage of churches. People can go where they want to go. And if those individuals are doing what they're doing and preaching what they're preaching, and they got folk coming to those churches, people are going there because they want to go. I have a buddy, theologically, he does not, he has a stance where he doesn't believe in homosexuality from a theological point. And he has a mega church in Atlanta, Georgia, but he's in Atlanta. So, so we all know the city of Atlanta. So one day he did an altar call. And in this altar call, the altar call was for those who were same gender loving individuals. He wanted all of those folks to come down to the altar. But this is what happened in his church. Automatically, people thought he was getting ready to probably cast out demons, right? Ask God to transform them. That was not his prayer. His prayer was for a prayer of love, compassion, a prayer that they would continue to feel love, because if they're coming to his church, knowing where he stands, obviously they feel something coming to his church. And so I think that I appreciate people like that who may not be where I'm at theologically, but if they're willing to go beyond their theological premise and say, hey, God loves everybody and so do I, and we accept everybody in our churches, then that's where we have to be. And those are the type of churches where I will go and visit. Anybody else who's practicing something different, dehumanizing people, anything contrary to the word of God, I just stay away. And but my duty is to make sure that I preach a Christ-centered message, point people to the Christos, and not to myself, not to religion, not to the church building, but to Christ.
Okay.
I can't agree with everybody, Reverend Conley and Reverend Black Cotton, but I'm to a point now where, your theology has to make sense. And if it makes sense to you, that's fine, but I find myself spiritually challenging theology. Like, well, why do you feel that way? Just having the person to have a thought process with themselves. Or you feel that way because it's your mother told you, your father. What is tradition? Why do you feel this way? Why do you feel this way about this? Why do you don't think that God can give a message through a woman? Like, sometimes you gotta talk people through stuff. And once they talk to you, you may not change their mind, but you can put a thought. But like Reverend Conley said, it's hard to try to, argue with people because you don't want to get stressed out, or you don't want to create a adversarial relationship, because people believe what they want to believe. But I just think it's good to pose a question like, why do you believe that? What is it rooted in? So that's what I have to say about it.
Just don't come bother me. You believe what you want to believe. Don't come bother me. I'm not gonna bother.
Right.
Don't bother me.
And at the same time, don't allow your sisters to be disrespected and disenfranchised for anybody.
That's right.
At the same time, I am your sister. And if you see somebody disrespecting me and dishonoring me, I expect for my brothers to come to my rescue, because my sisters are already going to be there. Let's clear. I have my sister circle is going to be there. Where is my brother's circle? Hello, where are you? I don't see you.
You got 4 brothers right here who I believe got your back. And
I'm confident with one. I'm serious. I'm confident with one, and the other one, I believe he'll sneak up in there somewhere. I don't know this brother too well. I host and I honor you in this moment, but you look like you can throw down a little bit. But Alan, you look like you ready to have, okay, can we sit down and mediate this conversation?
And that's where I'm at, because, reconciliation, Jesus' ministry was a ministry of reconciliation. So where I'm at, my thing is, if we're at the table, I gotta be able to know who's speaking for me, because everyone who says that they're speaking for you, you may think that they have your interests, or that they're representing your interests. But when you leave that table, there's a lot of activists out here who we think, they about it, but they're making deals, and for me, I don't need that. So my thing is, who's doing the reconciliation? So now, if we bring them on this call, because it's easy for us to say things about somebody else when they're not in the room. But I want that brother, or that sister who's operating in a way that may be dehumanizing or disrespectful to others. Let's bring them in the room together so that we can work towards reconciliation. But for me to preach a message from my pulpit about somebody else down the street, it doesn't do any good. And I think that has happened down through the years, where people will call out folk, right? But they won't do that when they're in that same room with them. And that's kind of where I'm at. My thing is that, hey, if we're going to move forward as a people and fight for equality and equity and all of those good things, let's get into positions where we can not speak truth to power, but speak truth while we have been empowered. And that's what we don't have enough. We don't have enough people that's in power speaking truth. And we just keep saying, we got to speak truth to power. And we don't understand what we're saying. What you're saying is that you're not in power. You don't have any power, but I can speak truth. No, I want to be in power so that I can speak truth while I am in power. And so as a pastor, if I'm entrusted with a congregation, my duty is to speak truth from that pulpit while I'm in that position of power. Not to go outside of my church and say that I'm going to speak truth to power. No, I am power, so let me speak truth while I'm in this position of power.
Hey, you know what, Alan? That's the essence of it. Mm-hmm. I forgot the guy's name, but he was trying to wrap the Jews up. But she was supported by Mordecai.
Yes.
An elder, a brother. But he was a family member of hers. But she didn't speak bad about this guy away from him. She got him in the room with the king.
That's it.
And confronted him, in terms of, what was happening and what plan was being botched out, hashed out. So, I think what Johnny talked about, I love that approach because it's just like Neely Fuller would say, when somebody call you a nigga, don't get mad. Just what is a nigga? What is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, try to make sure that we're on the same page. However, I do know from working with people, there are a lot of fools out here. It ain't no talking to. It's just no talking. They just ready to, go. But I also realize that most people don't want it. They don't want it. They don't want it. You know what I mean? So, I think to our sister's point, sometimes we do. We just got to, pull out the sword.
Yeah.
But then there are some people who we do, we need to approach with, that reconciliation part. How do we rebuild this? How do we reconnect? Restore. How do we restore?
Because what does it get us? If you don't believe what I believe, and I feel that it's an opportunity for me to call you out, you still believe at the end of the day, believing what you believe, all that did was it made me feel good because I felt that I got it off my chest. We can't change people. We can't, and that's not our job. Our job is to speak that truth while we're in power in those positions and make sure that we are not guilty of theological malpractice and make sure that we're not guilty of doing anything contrary to God's word. But here it is. God is the person, is the spirit being, is the entity, is the supreme being that's going to change those individuals. We can't change them. It's not our job. So I don't want to change folks. That's why I'm not going to bother them. I remember in seminary, there's a lot of professors I had in seminary that who I believe that they had the theory, but a lot of them didn't have the praxis, and that's what So it's that's what James Cone is arguing in his book with Reinhold Niebuhr. Reinhold Niebuhr is a sound theologian, but for him to not be able to see the significance, to see the parallel between lynching and the cross, for James Cone, his argument is that you have failed as a theologian, and he called him out and told him, "Hey, you pastored in one of the most blackest cities there were, Detroit, and for 50 years, after 50 years there, after pastoring, you said you never had any controversy." And that's not because he didn't have controversy, because he didn't go outside of his church and speak to the white supremacists. He didn't have any controversy because in his congregation, he never dealt with segregation being sin.
Yeah, true story. True story.
And at the same time, James Cone was not able and did not speak to the differences and the oppression between black women by black men and white women. Thusly, we getting the womanist theology. He supported by giving those women, Dolores Williams, Jacqueline Grant, and Katie Geneva Cannon, and Linda Thomas. Let's not forget her, because had it not been for Professor Linda Thomas, womanist theology would not have gotten off the ground the way it did. But allowing them space to form this type of liberation kind of theology, to be able to attach, so that women like Kelly Brown Douglas can write things like white women's Christ and black women's Jesus. So, I mean, yeah, James Cone did great, but he did even greater by acknowledging where he could not go and opened up space for others to come through.
And I think that's how we have to do. Everyone can't do it all. And there's so many agendas, right? Everyone there's so many agendas, good or bad, but you can't do it all. And so I think that everyone has to figure out pretty much what is their niche. For me, what I would do to empower you, Sister Black Cotton, I would create the space, right? Maybe like this here, the gentleman who's allowed us to be on his panel. This is his way of empowering women. Because there are some brothers who they wouldn't have another sister on the panel. It would just be all men. There's some, I challenge people when they do their revivals, and you look at the lineup for the week, and all you see is men. And I ask them, where's the women, right? So that's so people do those things, but then I have to look at it when it's my turn. If I'm the one that's going to host a revival, I have to make sure that I create space for women so that they know that they are empowered, at least in this space. They may not be empowered down the street, but when they come here, they'll be empowered. So that's how I kind of move.
And that's a beautiful situation, because you guys, without me even asking, have answered my next two questions. The next two questions was, the first one was going to be, can you give people who we're fractured, we're into several different directions. You guys, you talk about the same-sex love. You talk about the people who feel disenfranchised. Last week we did do a panel with all women, and you hit on the women portion of the church. And who are some of the people that you guys can direct people? Because if you give some names and bullet point what they've done, as the Sister Black Cotton just did, can you give our listeners names to take hold to, so they can go, okay, well that this guy doesn't really appeal to me, but this woman does, or this woman doesn't really appeal to this woman, but she might touch this brother. Can y'all give 2 or 3 people each, and point people or potentially point people in a direction that can touch their spirit?
I guess, I can go, it depends on what you're looking for. If there's someone listening who is looking for a church home, and they would love to be in a church where maybe they're looking for a female pastor. I have a good friend, Andrea Davidson, who pastors Hartsdale United Methodist Church. A wonderful woman of God, loves people, and preaches and operates. I don't want to say just preaching, but her work outside of the pulpit, community-minded, good church. LaJohnia, I'm butchering her first name, but Ellis, Pastor Ellis, female pastor, McCormick alumnus. She's pastoring an AME church in the Bronzeville community, and is socially minded. Social consciousness is the core of what she does. And then there's so many other things, right? Some people may not be looking for a church home. Maybe they're looking to see how they can be involved and how they can play a role in their community. I tell you, I got to advocate for Chicago Public Schools. So if you live in the city of Chicago, I admonish you to be a part of your local school council some kind of way. If you have children in Chicago Public Schools, be a part of the parent advisory councils at your school, because every school has a PAC, every school has an LSC. And when you're trying to move change, you can't change anything unless you are a part of it. Mm-hmm. And so I always encourage people to just get involved. Don't just sit back and critique. It's easy to critique from the sidelines because you're watching everything that's being done. But once you get in the game, now you got the responsibility to run the football. It's up to you now. And you got some people out here who will block for you. I'll block for you, but it may not be my job to score the touchdown for you. And that's what I mean by all of us have a role to play, and we can't do it all. And those who try to do it all, is always something that does not get done well. So I always try to focus on what it is that I can do well, but create the space. So those are some people and some things that I can mention that I think would be helpful to those who are listening.
And that's Latanja.
Yes.
Pastor Latanja Ellis of Turner AME Church.
Yep.
On 39th and Indiana or State, one of those two.
I think it's Giles.
So Google Turner AME in Chicago if you're an AME. And the pastor currently is Latanja Ellis. I saw a note real quick, Chief Rocca, who said churches are all about the money. Yeah, that one. Hey, sugar. Listen, not all churches are about the money. That's not a fair thing to say. Don't say that. There are prosperity gospel doctrines that have done damage to the people, not just the Black church, but the white church and the Latinx church, the Korean church. All churches have been afflicted by some type of hurt when it comes to the damaging prosperity gospel. So it's not all. And if you go look at the Black church documentary from PBS, you will see they have Reverend Ike on there and the Harmelites and a whole bunch of other folks. And I want to say it's the third hour. Mm-hmm. So take a look at that and hugs and love to you. But I want to also add, not just churches, but it is my desire that people, if you desire to learn and get some type of education, and yes, theological education is expensive. At the same time, there are certificated programs that churches, that schools are offering, seminaries are offering it right here in the Chicago area. So McCormick Theological Seminary is part of a consortium of theological seminaries, about 12 of them. And you can go and Google that and take a look and see if there is a seminary that's offering some type of Black church studies certificate program. I'm going to talk about McCormick because, hey, I'm a McCormick student and they got to pay my bills, amen. And so we do, McCormick does have a Black Church Studies program. Chicago Theological Seminary has a type of Black Church Studies program, and so does Garrett, where you are getting master level courses at a very highly discounted rate. And you will be able to engage in not only in these type of conversations, but have access. And access is not just to the folks who are grad students, who are PhD students, who are all of, and PhD and D-Mins or all of that. We got to break those doors down to allow the laity to come in. Next week is the Proctor Conference. It is not too late to sign up for the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference to see people from all over the world convening into one virtual space to talk about various different topics like pastoral care, like church administration, like digital hush harbors. Like this is the digital hush harbor, believe it or not, it's what it's called in the realms of academia. So and how to worship in digital spaces and how to sisters of the rock and brothers of the struggle, all that kind of other wonderful stuff. So those are my offerings for you all. School, Proctor Conference. Alan, if you're interested, the Festival of Homiletics is free this year. So if you want, as you're preaching or any preachers that are out there, Google Festival of Homiletics. It is an annual conference for people who are interested in preaching the Word of God. And they have a whole listing of, let's see, Dr. Otis Moss III is going to be there, and he's going to offer up some workshops and will be a keynote speaker. And it's free. It's all online. And it's free. Columbia Theological Seminary is offering free as part of their reparations. The school was very instrumental in slavery, and they are offering free graduate degrees to African American students who apply and get accepted. So, I mean, opportunity for education is there.
Brother EJ?
Yeah, sure. So I must say, I'm not. This is a weakness of mine. Like knowing like really viable places to go today and viable resources in terms of the Christian community. I mean, obviously, I know these people here today. The beautiful thing about today is also that we live in a virtual world. So, we don't have to just tap into local resources or present day resources. I'll tell you, one of the ladies who really impacted me was Jackie McCullough. Sister, you hear me? She was a preacher that would come to Sweet Holy Spirit, and she just made me want to be a better preacher. And so you talk about a sister that can lay down the doctrine, lay down the Bible, lay down, holiness. That's somebody you can Google, YouTube, and listen to. Now, if you want to look at something local, especially for churches that are open to women being involved in like the upper echelon of the church, we have the Power Circle, which is over on South Chicago, with Reverend Dr. Joseph Hill. They're also welcoming of same-gender loving people. These are people who invite you in, and you do what you do. Also, I just want to bring up Christ Universal Temple, also a very impactful church. They deal a lot with the metaphysical aspect of the scriptures, to kind of for people who are on that level and of that speed. So I definitely recommend that church as well. Another sister that's in San Francisco, Yvette Funder, powerful sister who deals with the HIV community, has always been about, hey, same gender loving people. I mean, way before it was popular. This is what she's been doing. She's always been a mainstay for me. And did I have everybody? So that, those are the things that people, resources that I would have to offer, that I would think might kind of help me. But again, like someone mentioned earlier, it just kind of depends on the need. What people are looking for. So, your audience, maybe want to, have additional chat on the YouTube feed. I can always kind of come back and offer what I do.
And if people are in need of some resources as far as food, because I want to address the gentleman's comment about the churches being about money. One of the things that COVID-19 revealed is the essentiality of the church. So when grocery stores were looted and when people didn't have access to food, you had churches all over this city and all over the country who were giving out food. And I know one church in particular, New Beginnings, every Saturday since the pandemic hit, Pastor Brooks and his congregation, they're giving out food all day long until it runs out. And there's other churches I can name around the city that's been giving out food. Our organization, Beyond the Brick Ministries, we do it on the third Saturdays of the month. But those churches that do that type of benevolence, those are churches that's not in it for the money. They're in it to bless the community and those who live in the city that their ministries are in. And many of us who say that the church is about money and don't go to church, when it's time for that funeral, a lot of those funerals are in churches where sometimes those individuals were not even members of those churches. And I've seen it, the church where I was a part of as an assistant pastor was a mega church on the south side of Chicago. And Pastor Bishop Brazier helped revitalize that community. But there were so many funerals that we had in that church where those families were not members of the church, but they allowed those families to have their funerals there. And some of them came back to the church, some didn't. But that's the role of the church. So I just wanted to say that to address that comment that was made.
Brother Johnny, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sister Black Cotton.
I was just saying Ashe.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes, indeed. Brother Johnny, I asked the question of, we were speaking about how the church is beneficial, and I was asking a question of, could you please, if you know of any resources that the listeners can just tap into, pastors on, like Brother EJ said, pastors on YouTube, and everybody else gave other resources that they could use to be of aid if they are outside of the church, or even if they're in the church and not very comfortable in their church home. I was looking for guidance for the listeners.
Well, in this group, we all travel in the same circles. So a lot of things that's been said, I would have stated already. So everything that everybody said, I would just recommend those items, those places as well.
Okay. I just didn't want to leave you out. Another point is this that I want to make. Another point, one of the biggest points I want to make, in accordance to what everybody has said, another point that I want to make is, I don't want to call them the forces of evil, but they're not the best course of action at this point in regards to dealing with people in our community, and that would be the police force. When the national media and social media start making public of the violence that we're subjected to via the police, one of the answers to that problem was the mayors of major cities in America were putting boots on the ground. Is that a method that churches can use again? Because, at one point, pastors used to stay out on the corner and preach. All of us are from Chicago. We know about that one brother who's been standing out on State Street preaching for 100 years. Is that something that we should reinvest in? We all know that guy, but, is that working? Is it worth it? Or do you think, is it another path we should take?
Very good question. Very good question. I don't know if standing out on the corner would mean what it used to be. I don't know about about that. I don't know if you guys have heard about Earth 2.0 or 2.0 Earth, where things have become virtual, where you can actually literally buy space virtually. Like you can buy, your own house virtually. It's great. Right? So, in terms of being out on the corners, I don't know if people's attention, even when people are outside, they have their iPods on. They're not really present on the train. Like, remember we used to be on the train, on the bus. I used to ride down the 3rd Street bus. Brother used to preach the whole way till we got to the red line. People are not present to what you're saying, there. At least that's my experience. So for me, I would judge that it would be a waste of time. I grew up with preachers who we marched through Rosa. Meeks and Bishop Trotter and a couple other ministers were responsible for helping people shut down the liquor stores that were causing, at least that's what we thought was like causing so much violence in that neighborhood. We were out in the community doing that kind of good stuff. So for me, those two different questions. Should we be out preaching, in the community, or should we be out serving in the community? And I think, definitely we need to be out serving in the community. I think Alan pronounced that earlier, about service and being out. I think that's one of the main badges of the church is to be about service. And definitely you have to do that.
I concur. I think that it's not about preaching. There's enough preaching. YouTube, you can go on YouTube and hear people preaching all day long. And some of it all is going to sound the same. But one of the messages I kept hearing during the pandemic last year over the summer, I heard preachers saying, "Oh, you can't walk by fear. We're supposed to walk by faith." And people were still trying to draw people back into a building. And I'm like, I'm not going back into a building. Even some churches where people ask me to come preach, the first question I asked was, are people going to be there? And that was going to be the determining factor for me. But for me, I learned the antithesis to fear. It's not faith. And that's what we often say, that it's faith. The antithesis to fear, I believe, is love, because Jesus said in the Bible that not Jesus, but John. John says that perfect love casteth out all fear. And then Paul talks about how the greatest gift is love. So then he says that he didn't give us the spirit of fear. What did he give us? Power, love, and a sound mind. So I think that just with that exegeting the text that way, in that manner, it lets me know that there's no scripture in the Bible that says that faith is the opposite of fear. Love is. And so where there's an abundance of fear, I believe that there's a lack of love. And what we need more of in our world and in society today is love. If people can see and feel the love of Christ, then maybe they'll be more prone to come to our churches. But many of them don't want to have anything to do with the church because they have not felt love. So to your question, I think we do need to be present, but we need to be present with love, some acts of kindness, so that people can see and feel the love of Christ.
Ministry of presence is key. Indeed it is. And to Pastor Allen's point, real quick, Allen, Beyond the Brick Ministries is located where?
So we are not relegated to brick and mortar. Right now we're fluid. We pretty much we meet via virtual space, but every third Saturday there's something that we do. Either we're out in the community doing something, but right now we're getting ready to put together some self-empowerment series. And the first one we're going to do is on financial literacy, because we did a survey, and that's one of the things that our family said that they needed help with was financial literacy. But you can, our website is still being developed. This is a brand new organization, but you can email us at info@beyond, BEYOND, info@beyondshy.org. But we don't have brick and mortar. We do a Bible study on Wednesday nights through Zoom.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. I was asked that someone sent me a text and asked me, where's his church? And I said, when I get an opportunity, I'll ask. So
we may, when the time comes, we may go into a building.
I mean, with the name like Beyond the Brick, I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know. That don't sound right. But encircling master moderator.
Yes, ma'am.
So, can I respond to Chief Raka and Tomasa at the same time too?
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, Chief Raka, you asked what did we think about ATMs in the church, and it felt like you being forced to pay. I've never seen an ATM in the church, so I can't answer that, but I will let you know that I'm glad that I have not seen an ATM in the church, because I rely on retail therapy a whole lot. And it would just make it super easy for me to go shopping after church. Because after you've been up in high praise, you got to go spend some money somewhere. Amen? So, sir, if it made you feel some kind of way, I don't want to apologize for something that I had nothing to do with. And at the same time, I want to let you know that I hear you with my heart. Okay? So, Madam Tomasa, greed turned you from church. I feel you on that, sis, because there are some people who are masterly gifted, and raising the offering so that when they speak, they have the phonics necessary to cause some type of movement in your body, cause an affect in your body that will compel you to give. And I have come to learn to, when I hear that I don't give, because it turns giving into an emotion and not into a thoughtful process of wanting to give, to sow. Because when you sow, I am a gardener. So when you sow into the earth, it is with intentionality. It is not with an emotion. And again, I feel you with my heart, because I don't like that either. So I am in agreement with you. So, what was your question again?
Actually, you actually answered it initially, because you gave the resources, and I was just reiterating for Brother Johnny. This will probably be the last question, unless you guys want to continue, because I was told that some people have limited time. The question I want to ask now is, Brother Allen touched on it earlier. You know, he talks about Judaism. He talked about Islam, and he actually talked about its roots in Africana studies. You know, I've learned via Dr. Henry Clark that monotheology was discovered on the continent. You know, whether it's Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, it was all studied. That is the basis. It all comes from the continent. You guys spoke about how you spoke about, to be specific, Sister Black Cotton, how they've co-opted culture out of northeastern Africa to remove us. Do you guys see it being a possibility of some type of theological coalition or spiritual coalition with that, you know, since, as you stated, we are being co-opted out of certain things. Some of us are Jehovah's Witnesses, some of us are from the Islamic faith, some of us are Jews, some of us are Christians, some of us are Catholic. Is there any way to make sort of like a rainbow coalition, or do you think that's possible so we can not remove our faith, that would be the wrong terminology, that we could just come to a common ground to get our family, our spiritual family in order, while respecting everybody else's faith? Is this something that we can do, like a rainbow coalition, like with Reverend Jackson, but a spiritual coalition? Is that a possibility? I like to go to Johnny, then I like to go to Alan, then Brother EJ, and close out with you, Sister Black Cotton.
That's a good question. I think each community has their own unique situation, and that's not to negate anybody's situation. But I think the Black community has some issues we are dealing with. I think we can combine like a radio coalition, but I think sometimes we lose track of concerns that are unique to Black people. So we have to keep that in mind when we going forward, and we gotta have people that's willing to bend and support us the same way we support them. I just feel as working with organizing different things, I know a lot of Black communities, a lot of organizations, they've been over backwards for other communities. But when it comes time for our support, it's not seen as much. I would say that over the last year, in some of these situations that occurred with the innocent killing of Black people, I have seen more participation. But I think that's because of social media, and you can't hide from some of this stuff. It's right there at you. So, with that being said, I think it will work, but we have to continue to work within the Black community with some of those issues we have.
Yeah, I agree, Reverend Johnny, that your question is, can it happen? Yes, it can. Anything can happen. Will it happen? I don't know. Will it happen while I'm here on earth? But I do know that what Reverend Johnny said is true, that there are some things that we need to deal with as a people. Dr. Joy DeGruy has a book out called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And in that book, she talks about the infighting that takes place amongst African Americans due to a mentality that we had during slavery. So when it is that a slave owner wanted to have his way with the slave's daughter, the mother in innocence would say, she's no good. You don't need her. She's not good for anything. And she did that in innocence to protect her daughter. But that mentality, Dr. Joy argues that it transferred down through generations. And here we are today, when someone is successful, we have that same mindset that they shouldn't be in that position. How does he have this show? He must have did something. He must have sold something, or he did something illicit to get to where he is. Or Sister Black Cotton, how did she get into seminary? She must have, she did something to get there, or whatnot. And as a people, that's only because we're still suffering with some wounds that are there that stems from slavery. And the only way we can heal is if we first identify the wound. Once we do that, then perhaps we can come together as a people and sing Kumbaya and keep it moving. But until then, we got to first identify these wounds and deal with them.
Right. Yeah. So Alan's point about the post-traumatic slave disorder definitely has played a major role in the way we've created our culture and the way that we interact with one another. And obviously, a lot of this is beyond our conscious cerebral cortex. We're not consciously thinking about this stuff. It's just, there's that story about the mama who's using the butt pan to cook a ham, and the daughter asks her why she always cuts the ends off, and mama said, I don't know, you gotta ask your grandma. So the daughter calls her grandma and say, Grandma, why y'all always cut the ends off, of the ham? She said, I don't know, you gotta call Big Mama. So she called Big Mama. Big Mama saying, the reason why I cut the ends off the ham was because the pan I was using was too small. You know what I'm saying? So, but all of the people behind her didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. They just did what they saw. And we haven't really seen the church I grew up in. I saw interdenomination. We weren't even concerned about denominations. But we kicked it with Church of God in Christ. Reverend James Campbell. We were Baptists. We were Southern Baptists. But hey, Bishop Trotter didn't care. If you can preach, come on through. You know what I'm saying? That was our thing. So I guess in today's sense, Brian, in the context that you're talking about, we really do want to probably have interfaith movements. That would be how I would classify them or label that today. Would be interfaith, because obviously there are a lot of people who are divergent in terms of their actual belief system. Isn't it funny how Alan may believe in baptism where you got to get baptized in Jesus' name. You know what I'm saying? Where I believe you got to be baptized in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. You know what I'm saying? And then some people got to be baptized in Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and in Jesus' name, right? In order for you to be really baptized, I mean, hey, you remember that? You remember Black Cotton, that first day, one of our first days, people were pulling out scriptures. No, this is the reason why you need to be baptized in this name, right? Out of the same Bible, right? So there are people who, out of the same Bible, come up with different beliefs. That is just what it is, right? However, can we work side by side together collectively to be able to deal with the issues that we have in our community? Because divide and conquer is a military strategy. And if we can be divided, then we can be conquered. And that's what we're seeing. Our community has been relegated to the bottom. As a matter of fact, a lot of our people came over here and took on the title of Christianity because we weren't calling the principles that we have in the Bible Christianity. That wasn't what we called it. You know what I mean? That wasn't what it was, right? So to kind of negate to protest Alan's point from earlier, not that I want to fight this, but we weren't Christians. We became Christians because it was part of the totem pole system. We were trying to find our way up that system, right? So with that being said, we weren't called that. If we could just allow ourselves to suspend our belief systems in the respect of people's humanity, so that way we can deal with the real issues that are ailing our communities. Grandmama's raising babies. That's a real issue. They tied. Parenting is a real issue. Alan also brought up the other piece about the financial literacy. That's a real issue. But can we come together as churches, interfaith, religious, whatever, Muslim, Nations of Gods and Earth, Wicca, whatever it is you want to do, you be, however you want to roll, you know what I'm saying? But can we come together as humans and really deal with the matters that are at hand? For me, that I believe is definitely possible because God is potential. That anything is possible. But again, like Alan said, will it happen? I believe yes. I think our younger people have a different mindset and are capable of being able to work beyond the belief lines, so to speak. These are things that other communities do. We just don't see it so much practiced as intentionally in our communities, unfortunately. But I definitely believe that it's a necessary tool to be able, especially from a religious and spiritual point of view, to be able to deal with that.
Sister Black Cotton?
So there is an organization called the World Council of Churches that has been in existence for years. In the 9/11, after 9/11 occurred, and mosques were being threatened by people and being burned down. There's a particular mosque over in Barrington that called together a group of religious people, and they had a really huge meeting in the basement of their church, of a church on the very northwest side of the city. Huge church. And as my pastor, B. Herbert Martin, at the time, as we drove up to the church, I could see all of these different people. I saw shamans, I saw Sikhs, I saw, what do you call the people, the Hare Krishners, I saw monks, and all of us converged into this one particular space. Now, mind you, my pastor didn't go because he had someplace else to be. He sent me. He dropped me off. And right before, I remember being so scared, right before I got out the car, and he was like, you all right? And I was like, there's a lot of people here, and I don't know if I'm smart enough to handle it. And he gave me the pep talk that was necessary for me to get out and go sit in that basement. And I sat at a table with 3 Baptist preachers. One was a Southern Baptist, and the other 2 were National Baptists. 2 were black, 1 was white. 2 Buddhist monks, a Wiccan, and a deacon from the Church of Satan. And they called us all together to come together to figure out ways to protect all of the mosques in the city of Chicago and the collar counties. And we sat there, everybody from all backgrounds, and worked out a plan of action for mosques to carry out in the event that they are being attacked, to the point that all of us were to converge onto a space and put up our bodies as resistance. So I say that to say that it's going to, for a true interfaith, because I can imagine, my dear brother moderator, that when I said Church of Satan, folks cringed in their, because I saw you kind of sniffing a little bit. You didn't push me out, but you were willing to hear what I had to say. At the same time, you were like, "What the devil is this girl talking about on my show?"
No, that's not what.
I got questions about that too.
It was just.
It was in your eyes.
It was just beyond me that it even existed.
Yes, they exist. They are at St. Charles. They're in St. Charles, Illinois, and they are still there. And at the start of I am in contact with one of the deacons, not regularly. It's not a regular conversation. The deacon even came to Progressive Community Center, the People's Church, and met with Pastor Martin. Yes, he did. And they were able to have dialogue. He worshiped with us.
You're going to have to call me, Sister Black Cotton, afterwards, and we're going to, sometime during the week, because I want to know about that collaboration.
Well, we're going to do another show.
Another show.
Yeah.
I want to say this. I apologize. I misunderstood the question as far as interfaith. A lot of interfaith work is happening, to Sister Black Cotton's point. It's just that it's not publicized. So in the work that I do as the director of the Office of Faith-Based, I work with faith-based organizations across various faith distinctions. So we have Muslims as a part of our partnerships, because we have a high Muslim population of students on the north side of Chicago, and these are Orthodox Muslims. And then we have Jewish synagogues that's a part of our faith-based partnerships. Then, of course, we have the Black Church. We have some multicultural churches. So interfaith work is happening. Those, especially in the seminary circles, interfaith work is a continual thing that is happening. So that is happening. The question I thought you were asking, Master Moderator, was about the Black Church and us as a people coming together, which I think Reverend Johnny spoke to. Yeah.
In that sense, that is what I was speaking of. But both answers work, because those Jewish synagogues, those Muslim mosques, we're there as well. So yeah. So both answers work for the question. I just put a question on the screen. If anybody would like to approach that question, please do. And I want someone to approach another question, a statement as well, on that's in the screen on the screen. Anybody can have that.
Well, you know what? I would have to kind of assume what he means when he says all this evil. This is referring to carjacking is referring to insurrection. Washington, D.C. is talking about trauma that we have dealt with for over 400 years in this particular country. For me, I'm just going to kind of take it in kind of like Zootopia when Fox was advising the rabbit on how to answer questions. He was like, you got to make your own question and then answer the question, right? So I'm gonna make my own question in this particular case, Chief Rocka, is that Will the black church start leading our people back to each other so that we can overcome all this evil that is going on in our country? And this kind of goes into the question that, the statement that you were making, Brian, earlier about police officers. For one, white bodies in this country were traumatized even before they came to this country. Dealing with the feudal system and church, the way people were being handled over there, they brought that trauma here. And traumatized people or hurt people. So when they brought black people over here, quote unquote black people, that trauma was transferred to black people. And which has a lot to do with the way we show up in this country. And then those police officers who manage, so to speak, all of this are also traumatized. So we're looking at a lot of different bodies that are literally feeling trauma. It is definitely my mission, doing shadow work, bioenergetic healing, to actually address that issue of why people show up the way we end up showing up and being evil towards one another. That's definitely the mission of my church. It's about dealing with me and dealing with my trauma and addressing that trauma. When we talk about, how does that make me feel, right? We're talking about the impact that it actually makes on a person, right? And because when, if somebody says something, to Reverend Black Cotton, and it impacts her in a way where she's angry, we know that that's having some type of impact on her. And if it's something to the point where she can't let go of that emotion, that even causes a deeper wound, right? And so the issue is how do we address that? That's something that I preach. That is something that I study and that I'm big in and deep in. And that's what I work for. I can't speak for other churches. I'm not a part of a consortium of churches where I influence other churches. And I think that's one of the misnomers that a lot of people have about the church is that all churches operate the same. They don't. All churches don't operate the same. Just because one church has an ATM in it don't mean all churches got ATM in it. Just because you experience greed in one church don't mean you got greed going on in all churches. As you can see, the people on this panel, we rock different. We don't rock, what I'm saying, with churches that are about that. That's not our life. I can't even tell you. I don't know about that kind of stuff. So with that being said, and I know the people on this call here are sincerely working towards making a difference in their own families, in their own communities, and trying to be authentic to the gospel. I can honestly say that. So with that being said, a lot of the assumptions and questions or loaded questions that you guys are offering or providing, I think they just come from your own personal experiences, but they just come from the barbershop talk, where folks just kind of talking about stuff, and it is what it is. But there are a lot of churches out here, man, that are sincerely trying to deal with real issues. It's not back to, we've been doing this. There's some folks that's been doing this, and they stay doing this. And so that's my answer to that question.
Anybody else want to elaborate?
I just want to say to brother who posed the question, possibly the church, there's a church out there that's waiting on you to be a part and help them lead. Because one, we can't put all of the responsibility on a church or on a pastor or one person. There will never be, I was alluding to this earlier, there will never be this one person again. We're going to have to be collaborative. And we've learned this now with this pandemic, that in order to get out of this, we had to work together, because we had leadership in our country that created the divided states of America, where everyone was fending for themselves. And so now we learned that there's some power in collaboration. So to the brother who posed the question, I think that maybe you could be the one to help a church or churches lead people back. But it's not going to do any good if we're just sitting back on the outside and just looking in and saying what the church should be doing. We have to be in that place to hold people accountable. So maybe you're the one.
Before anybody else speaks, before your sister Black Cotton speaks, I think the question on the screen is best suited for you to answer, Brother Allen.
Why is that?
Because he works in an entity that does not have walls, and that's what she's speaking to. Do you see the question?
You want me to answer that question?
I wanted you to address this one right here.
Oh, look. Yeah, so I've had this question asked, and I tell you, COVID-19 has revealed that those who before the pandemic was saying that you need to come to church, if you don't come to church, you going to hell, or all of that foolishness. We found out that we don't have to go to church, to a physical building, to receive God, right? But this is what I tell people. We are the church. The Bible says that we are the ecclesia. So us human beings, those who have been called out, we make up the church. We are the church. So you are the church. If you are a believer, Sister Coleman, you are the church. Now, as it relates to the physical building, those buildings do play a role. And if a church in your community, if they close its doors and you don't feel it, you don't notice that they're gone, then they probably didn't need to be there in the first place. But there are some churches in our communities that if they were to close their doors, that community would go down. But as it relates to you, your soul, you having a relationship with God, you don't necessarily need to go to a church. You don't. There's no one can show me in scripture where it says that I have to go to church. In the Bible, the church, they had their worship was in homes. It was in houses. And they didn't have membership. There was no, you had to come down the aisle and you had to get the right hand of fellowship to become a part of the church. You simply just believed and you were followers of the way. They weren't even called Christians. But I do want to say this. Does it benefit you to be a part of a church, of a congregation? Yes, it does. Membership has its privileges. And I tell you that to be a part of another body of believers, some other like-minded people who have your best interests at heart, put me around some people that's positive all day long. Put me amongst a group of people who's going to look out for me. I tell you, in the Jewish synagogues, when someone finds themselves in trouble and they need a lawyer, they need a doctor, they got everything right there. Come on. That's it. It should be the same way in our churches. Everything that we need, whoever we need access to, it should be right there in our churches. And I was blessed to be a part of one of those churches, Apostolic Church of God. We had everything right there. We had people, Michael Jordan's mother to this day is a member of that church. You had Don Thompson, who's a former CEO at McDonald's, who's a member of that church. And when people, because I saw in one of the comments was about utilities and things like that, we paid for people's utilities. If the utilities were cut off, we helped other churches that were on the brinks of not being able to meet their mortgage responsibilities. So those are some of the benefits that come with being a part of the church. So to answer your question, do you have to go to receive Christ or to be saved? No. But does it benefit you? Yes, it does.
And Sister Black Cotton, if you would like to address that as well, feel free. But I just, I was just saying, hey, this is his wheelhouse. That's why I directed it towards him. But you feel free. The floor is yours.
Thank you, darling. I appreciate it. Tomasa, I'm hoping I am saying your name correctly. On YouTube, there is a woman by the name of Reverend Melva Sampson, who is the curator of what's called the Pink Robe Chronicles. And what she has done on a Sunday morning has revolutionized how we think of meeting for church on a Sunday morning. Oftentimes, before the pandemic started, and I'm running out to church, and I'm running late, it's because I have been sitting in my pink robe, listening to my girl preaching and teaching and just being real at the start of all of this, before all of the music restrictions and copyright infringement came into play. We would have the service where she would just preach and have this whole conversation and talk to us. And then after that is over, there was a whole after party. And so where she was playing, she's from Miami. She's from the South Florida area, living currently in North Carolina. So she's playing Baltimore house. She's playing DC go-go music. She's playing occasionally. She would throw in some Chicago house. I had to, get her about that. And at the same time, we would have communion, and communion would look like part of the sandwich and a glass of wine. Amen. On a Sunday morning before we go to church. And now that we are in this, in our own homes, in our own temples, in our own sanctuaries, and we are watching and we have community, I think where people got that wrong is that scripture in Hebrews 13 and 7 or 17 that says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, and didn't put it into proper context. And because they didn't put it into proper context, down through the years, it kept getting misinterpreted, and then became incorrect doctrine and incorrect theology, and then theology of oppression to get people to come to church. So, with that, I offered Pink Robe Chronicles to you. She's currently on sabbatical, but since it's a whole few years worth, so you have time to catch up with the rest of us. Just come and join. You don't have to buy a pink robe. I invite you to, it's just a go. Is she uploaded all of her services, I call them services, on YouTube, and Pink Robe Chronicles. Check it out. You just might like it.
Okay. With that being said, I just want to address what the show is about, and I want you guys to have closing remarks. Basically, the reason I had this show is because spiritual. I do believe that we are some of the most, if not the most spiritual people on the planet, and I think people are discouraged by some of that. As Brother EJ said, some of our personal experiences are running us away from A, each other, and B, the church, which will help strengthen each other. So, if you could give the brothers and sisters a word of encouragement or whatever's on your heart to exit, and then we can shut the show down. I'm going to close out with Sister Black Cotton, EJ, then Alan, then Sister Black Cotton. Thank you. EJ?
Oh, we on me first?
Yeah.
So, dig this. First of all, I want to say thank you to Reverend Black Cotton joining today. I definitely wanted to have a sister's perspective on here, and that's a bad sister. So, and I know she's articulate, and I know she's thoughtful and considerate, and so I knew she would represent them, and so I'm really grateful for her being on today. I'm honor you, sister, for your presence and your perspective, and just all of the wealth of knowledge, and even names. They took to giving out names and series. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So people can eat. She came with her trough today. And so that I'm grateful for. I also want to say thank you to my brother Alan. I've been with Alan since high school. We used to sing together, chemistry, Jodeci. You see what I'm saying? And I'm really grateful for the evolution of his ministry. He's always been a good brother, genuinely good brother. So he's the type of person you want to see as a pastor, overseeing other people and helping other people, and having his hand on the spigot resources to be able to assist people. So I'm grateful for his perspective. I love how he's taken his message and really modernized it so that way he can connect with people. So I'm really grateful for him being on today, taking time, because I know he's busy. I know he has a lot going on. So I'm grateful for him. Also, I honor you, brother. I appreciate your presence being on here. So in terms of what I just want to give people today, in terms of the church, kind of summing up what my experience is. First of all, I'm grateful myself being able to be on. I just met Brian last week in another call similar to this, and we were discussing some other matters, and we just kind of connected. So I'm really grateful for the work you're doing, brother, and bringing people together like this, so that way we can have positive conversations. I just want to say, I'm grateful for all of the voices. Johnny being on, I know he's not here, but I just want to thank God for that brother, amazing writer, good brother as well, good-hearted brother. And what I really want to say is that these people that were on this panel today took out their whatever it is that you clean tarnish off with, because the church has been tarnished. And so I'm grateful for their voices and their work and their experience, being able to take out that rag and take a little bit of that tarnish off of that. And hopefully the people who have listened today are able to see that all churches are not what you think that they are. I remember Pastor Galen at CET used to say, he said, whatever you think of God, God is not. And so, what people are thinking about the church is not. It is not. I used to have a lot of heavy criticism about the church, but what I realized is the churches, and especially in a lot of different communities, this is doing the best it can with the resources that it has and the knowledge that it's had. And you see that the church keep progressing. I'm so grateful for so many brothers and sisters going to college, going to secondary, post-secondary education, so that way they can hammer in and get the truth about what's really being said, as opposed to getting this doctrine from our oppressors, quote unquote. And so that's what I have for you. Is that church, what you knew and your grandmama knew and your mama knew, the church is not that. It's way more than that. And I do miss that church because that was a very valuable experience for me. It definitely kept me out of the streets. It definitely gave me a lot of experience to meet a lot of good people. I flew all around this country because of church. And so with that, I'm out.
Brother Allen?
Yes, sir. So thank you. Is it, I think I heard EJ say Brian.
Indeed it
Brian.
is.
Brother Brian, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you, Brother EJ, my brother. Wow, man, over 25 years now, I've been knowing EJ, and I thank him for the invite. He has been a preacher ever since I've known him. He was the only one who was preaching when we were in high school, even though we were still the mischievous kids that we were. He was already preaching then. He and I were both finalists for the I don't know if he remembers this, but for our for the senior year, there was a finalist for the speech, who was going to give the speech at the graduation. And and he actually gave the speech that year. And so I always knew he was going to be doing great things. And to Sister Black Cotton, thank you. It was an honor and a pleasure to be with you on this panel today. And Reverend Johnny, I've had the pleasure of serving with him for 3.5 years at the Metropolitan Apostolic Community Church in Bronzeville. So my closing remarks pretty much is just simple. God is not religious. We are. And so that is, I hold on to that. I try not to be religious. I don't really like hanging with preachers, to be honest. I went to seminary, and I'm grateful for my seminary education. But there's a wonderful book that I read by one of my writing coaches, Don Milan. He has a book called The Ancient Language of Eden. And in his book, he talks about how when he went to seminary, he wanted to just be able to hang with all of the religious elite, to be able to use all of the big jargons and using words like soteriology and all of this stuff. And he realized that after he finished, and when he started operating in ministry, it didn't mean anything. Because the ancient love language was the language of love, grace, and mercy. And so those of you who've been watching on today who may have had some bad experiences with the church, and maybe you've had some good ones, but the bad ones outweighed the good ones, I want to encourage you to know that we are all human. And we make mistakes. God does not make mistakes. But at the end of the day, God wants us to be relational. And I want to be in a relationship with you. If there's any way that I can help you along this journey, feel free to email me at info@beyondshy.org, info@beyond, BEYONDCHI.org. And I would love to connect with you. And we're all in this together. COVID-19 revealed that it don't matter how many letters you have behind your name. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many people you know. All of us are in this pandemic together, and all of us are in this thing called life together. So I love you guys, and thank you all so much for having me on today.
Hey, Alan, do you have Instagram?
I'm on Instagram at Al_Conley. Now, anybody that follows me on social media, follow me at your own risk because I am unconventional. I'm not preaching all day. I like to have fun. I like to be relational. So, but Al_Conley, Conley. I'm on Twitter, Al Conley, ALCONLEY. But if you want to experience God and some spirituality in a different way, also go to YouTube and you can find us at Unconventional TV. And we got 4 episodes out there where there's a message, there's music, there's inspiring stories, and we aim to do it all in 30 minutes. So maybe that could be somebody's virtual church experience, but Unconventional TV. Thank you.
Sister Black Cotton.
Hello, my dear friend Ryan. Thank you so much for having this particular platform. I am grateful for this opportunity. Alan, I haven't seen you in a month of Sundays. You look great, honey. And it's so good to see you. And to my dear friend, my cohort mate, 2015, I almost wore my t-shirt. I almost wore it. Thank you for trusting me with your friends on today, because when you asked me, I was like, okay, it's just Black church and not my wheelhouse, right? It's not my wheelhouse conversation.
No, we got to have another one for that.
Yeah. Because you say you're unconventional, Alan. I am super unconventional in that I am sex positive. So I love conversations about food and sex.
Come on, now. That's real.
And I am an ordained minister. So to Alan's point, I'm not somewhere stuck somewhere, living a night life. However, I am consecrated to the cross, and I am consecrated to my cause. And my cause is the liberation of God's oppressed. And in that, it is my hope and desire for those of you who have been traveling with us these past 2 hours and 12 minutes and counting. It is my desire that the Lord goes before you to make your way safe, easy, productive, prosperous, adventurous, careful, sensual, and joyful AF is my prayer.
See, that's why I want to have on here.
I love it.
We're going to get a different view of the church today. We're going to learn today.
Amen. I want to thank all of you guys. It has been truly enriching. I set up this forum again. Initially, I was going to do this for Black History Month. I messed around and found out that, as I stated at the beginning, Carter G. Woodson said, if you can talk about your history in 30 days, it ain't worth talking about. So I started off with a male panel, a woman panel, and then I want to talk about this. As I stated at the top of that, at the top of the ending, I think we're the most spiritually connected people in the world. So if we're not going to talk about the history of the church and how the church outreach programs, putting people through school, again, I'm not knocking my brother, number one Chief Rock of Jersey, Brian. I'm not knocking my sister Too Cute, because that's her nickname. That's her nickname, Too Cute. But I don't want them to believe I'm attacking their opinions, because you can only see the world through the eyes that you've been given. But it's kind of like the black on black crime thing, or brothers always messing up. Like me and the brother, Big Illinois, used to have a show on Wednesdays called The Backyard, and we would sit around and talk like we were in the backyard, right? And it was, remember the 4th of July weekend, about 55, 60 people in Chicago got shot. Me and Big Illinois did the research and found out that by us being Chicago, we know in certain parts of Chicago, we are not represented by and large. So if it's violence over there, it's really not us. Edgewater, Rogers Park, Devon, and Western, and other communities throughout, and we saw that violence that weekend was evenly spread throughout the city, and even our additional co-host was like, brothers need to get their act together. So I use that metaphor just like the church. You can't have one bad experience with the church, and we got 250 some odd years of uplifting and positive energy being pushed out of our churches. We can't say Reverend Ike and TD Jakes and Creflo Dollar and the mega churches are bad places, because they're all not. So my goal in this whole mission in Build and Destroy is exactly what it's called. I want to build up our community, destroy the lies and propagandas around our community. And I'm rebranding this now, because it used to just be me preaching. You know, folks, they're attacking us. We got to get this, you know. But what I'm going to do now is rebrand it, and hopefully I could continue to get good people like you guys. And you, EJ, you have the liberty to extend my phone number to anybody who was on the panel tonight, because I do want conversations like Sister Black Cotton. I do want you to come back, Alan, and talk about the Lord without boundaries, so to speak. You know, he's omnipresent, so this building is not going to represent God. We created this black church thing. Our ancestors speak through us every single solitary day. So I want to continue. My goal, shout out to the sister Karen Hunter, shout out to the brother Dr. Greg Carr. And they asked this question. Sister Karen Hunter asked this question every day. Yeah, but how does that free us? So my goal, and I've taken on the monicum of freeing us, one person, just like they say in the church, one Christian at a time, one Muslim at a time, or whatever. One person at a time. If we only reach one person this episode, it's somebody that's going to walk into a church, or going to listen to what Sister Black Cotton said, or going to listen to what you said, or going to listen to what Brother Johnny said, or listen to what EJ said, and they're going to be a better person because of it. So I want to, next week, I was going to do a little lip professing on my own, but I'm reconfiguring that again, because I want next week's show is going to be on the impact of us in the entertainment world, as well as how it's doing detriment to us and how we can get past it. So if you're interested, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and come back next week. I'm going to open up the panel to listeners in the chat rooms, so you can come in and talk to us. So please continue to support. We are built for this network. This is the End of the Bench podcast. I am HRap B. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please stay prosperous, stay healthy, and do the best you can to be the best you can. And as I say at the end of every show, I stole this from a guy named Reggie O'Shea, rest his soul. He goes by the pseudonym of Combat Jack. Dream those dreams and man up and woman up and live those dreams, because life without dreams flows in black and white. Life with dreams flows in Technicolor surround sound. And I close out with my own moniker, 2 fingers, 1 word. This is HRap, and we are out.